Hello everyone, back tuning into today's second video. Going to have a look at the weather for the next week to 10 days for today's second video, which will take us around the 25th of January. We'll be able to extend out a little bit beyond that with the extended GFS and ECMWF as well. They run to around a couple of weeks at least in terms of the ECM ensembles. Have a look at CFSV2 at the end of the video for the next month. So quite a lot to cram in, and I hope you find it interesting and informative. Just to say that today's first video was the ECMWF 30-day look ahead. That's using the ECM 30-day ensemble model from the Hungarian Met Office, and it looks like much of northern, central and western Europe, including the UK, going to be plunged into a prolonged bout of cold weather through the end of January and lasting well into February. So do have a look at that. Quite an interesting video to say the least. Now, before I do anything else, and you may be wondering why I'm on the Peppa Pig YouTube channel, I'm going to say hello and thanks for watching to, I think, just about our youngest viewer. So I'm going to say hello to Mia. Mia has been watching Gaz Woolits with her mum, and I've got to say hello to Mia and say thanks very much for tuning in to our video. Mia loves Peppa Pig, so I've been told, so that's why I'm on the Peppa Pig YouTube channel, but Mia has also been having a quick look at our videos as well. So a very young 4-year-old Mia tuning in to Gaz Woolits, and well, hello to Mia and hello to Mia's mum, and hope you carry on enjoying the videos. What should be a light snow, but we'll be looking to find some snow for Mia, I think, in the next few days, and thanks for tuning in to the vids, Mia. Right, got a new patron, so that's the next thing to do. I'm going to say thank you to our latest patron. We are now up to 55 patrons for Gaz Woolits. So I'm going to say big thank you to Wesley Fisher. Wesley Fisher has become Gaz Woolits' 55th patron. So thanks for becoming a patron, Wesley, for Gaz Woolits, and thanks to all of the patrons for Gaz Woolits as well. So it's helping us to pay for our YouTube channel. So if you'd like to become a patron for Gaz Woolits, all you need to do is come to the Gaz Woolits Patreon page. We link to this in the description at YouTube and on all the pages at Gaz Woolits. So you just come here, sign up for a Patreon account, and you're away and running, and you can give us an ongoing monthly donation. Of course, you can cancel at any time, but the idea with Patreon is like an ongoing donation. It only has to be $1 a month up and upwards, so it doesn't have to be a large amount of money at all. And by doing that, you become an official patron for Gaz Woolits. We'll give you a thank you and give you a shout out in the video as long as you want one. We've also had a new PayPal donation, so I have to say thank you very much. Hello, thank you to Jamie McGregor. So Jamie McGregor has become a PayPal donor for Gaz Woolits. So a big thank you to Jamie for doing that. If you would like to become a PayPal donor for Gaz Woolits, all you need to do is come to the Gaz Woolits PayPal.me page, sign in to your PayPal account, which most people have one of those these days, and you can give a one-off donation to Gaz Woolits. And again, you'll get a mention in the videos as long as you want one. We'll give you a shout out and say thanks very much for becoming a donor for Gaz Woolits. So big thank you to Jamie, and a big thank you to Wesley for becoming our latest donor and patron. So big thank you to both of you, and big thank you to all of the donors and all of the patrons for Gaz Woolits. Right, we're going to start off having a look at the Arctic Oscillation observed and forecast charts. So the black line here shows where we've been with the Arctic Oscillation. The red line's at the end where the Arctic Oscillation is being forecast by the GFS ensembles to go. So at the moment, you see we're very close to neutral. The black line there is just around neutral in terms of the Arctic Oscillation, but the GFS ensembles look like they're doing a little bit of a crash off the cliff, I have to say, in the extended range. So this is where we are right now, kind of like the middle of January. By the end of January, though, look how these ensemble members really are collapsing. They're crashing down to a very low level indeed. I think that's possibly the most negative that we've seen the Arctic oscillation being forecast to go for quite some time. Probably you have to go right way back to the beast from the east back in February to be seeing Arctic oscillation observed and forecast charts as dramatic as that in terms of a real plunge in the AO. You'll notice that for a few days it does actually go a little bit more positive, but then after that the crash really takes place through to the final sort of week or so of January. So that is indicative of northern blocking. You expect northern blocking to be appearing across the Arctic with that. Of course, it's always the weather that's driving the index. It's not the other way around. It's not the index that drives weather. So the reason we see those GFS ensemble members doing that plunge with the Arctic oscillation is because a lot of them are going to be building up large areas of high pressure. Of course, just because you've got a negative AO, just because you've got blocking, it doesn't necessarily guarantee that we're going to get cold from it, because it always depends exactly where that blocking is sitting as to where the cold air gets pushed out. Of course, if one place is on the cold side of blocking, somewhere else has to be on the milder side of it. So that's kind of like still to be determined where that blocking is going to set up. But that is a real plunge in the AO there that the GFS ensembles are going for today. North Atlantic oscillation wise, not as dramatic. So again, this is the NAO observed and forecast chart, the black line showing where we've been with the NAO, and the red lines at the end where the GFS ensembles are forecasting the NAO to go. So we're in positive territory with the NAO right now. We're just there. And the GFS ensembles are keeping us in positive territory for the next week. Then a little bit of scatter with probably around a 50-50 split, I would have thought, between some of the ensemble members that are keeping the NAO in positive territory and these ones that are going down into negative territory. Certainly nowhere near as clear a cut a signal to send the NAO negative as we have with the AO. So it's been an ongoing feature of this winter that this has generally been a fairly positive NAO winter so far. You see, we go back to the beginning of December just here, the early part of December, positive NAO. Then in the second half of December, we kind of like went close to neutral, but still a little bit on the positive side. We did get a few days of slightly more negative NAO conditions around the turn of the year, but really since the first week of January we've been in positive territory again with the NAO, and the GFS ensembles are generally still keeping positivity of the NAO going, although we have got some of the ensemble members that are going negative there. So it's an interesting winter, this, and it's one of the reasons why it's so complicated. It's a complicated winter, because it looks like the Arctic is increasingly trending towards blocking, towards large areas of high pressure sitting over the North Pole. But at the same time, the Atlantic is still really set up for this positive NAO, and that's where you have low pressure around Iceland and high pressure around the Azores, and you strengthen the Westlands. What this is going to do is create a fight, really, between the Arctic, which wants to produce a blocking and push cold air down into the mid-latitudes, and between the Atlantic, that wants to keep relatively mild westerly zonal type conditions going. The positive NAO is in large part down to the sea surface temperature anomalies, and we always knew right way back to last summer when we did the NAO forecast for the winter of 2018-19, we knew really that this was going to be a positive NAO winter, or at least the Atlantic would be set up for a positive NAO winter. Now that doesn't mean that you can't get a negative NAO, that you can't get cold weather, but you're going to need something external to force it. The Atlantic itself, the sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic themselves are not conducive to a negative NAO this winter. So we're looking for something external to happen away from the Atlantic to force the pattern negative in terms of the NAO, and to get high pressure around Iceland and low pressure around the Azores. And that can happen from a sudden stratospheric warming like we've had, and then a massive increase in northern blocking over the Arctic, and there are other ways that this can happen. Maybe a strengthening of the Siberian high due to rapid increase in snow cover across Siberia in October. All of these other elements can come into play, especially get further on into winter, to force the Atlantic into a negative NAO. But that's why it's such a complicated winter, really, this, and increasingly so since we had the sudden stratospheric warming. Right, GFS ensembles for the next couple of weeks. Next, we're looking at Heswall in the Wirral area today. Someone's asked me to have a look at Heswall or Heswell. So the red line here is the 30-year upper air temperature average for Heswall or Heswell. And we can see that generally we're going to be on the cold side of average with the upper air temperatures pretty much from now, or tomorrow anyway, through to the end. Actually, they're generally trending on the cold of an average side. So we're just starting off a little bit above average for today. By tomorrow, we're going colder than average. And then beyond that, really, we're keeping things pretty cold then through into the final stages of January. We can go right to the very end of the month now, virtually, with the GFS ensemble chart. Still this idea that we're talking about cold rather than very cold or plunging into the freezer. So again, the ensemble mean, which is the white line, is kind of like hovering around -5 at 850 HPA, which is cold. And if these other elements like the dew points and so on are right, then that will be conducive for snow, definitely. Between -5 and -10 at 850 HPA, you're talking about just standard cold weather. And if there's precipitation, the chance of some snow. To go into the freezer, we need to go to between -10 and -15 at 850 HPA in the upper atmosphere. And we see there are a few ensemble members certainly that are going down to -10, and one or two actually towards the end of January. This is 29th of January just here. One or two are actually going lower than -10 to kind of like between -10 and -15. So actually those ones are plunging into the freezer. That green line that you see just there, it's an outlier, but that is going into the freezer. It's underneath -10 at 850 HPA. But most of the ensemble members are between -5 and -10 in terms of the upper air temperature, which is cold. It's colder than average. It's underneath this red line, which is the 30-year temperature average. And so we can just say that the rest of January, once today is out of the way anyway, is likely to be either cold, potentially by month's end, could go very cold. That is a minority option, but the possibility, anyway, is there. Precipitation-wise, so becoming more unsettled. That's the other theme that's been recurring in the videos lately. We've had a very, very dry period of weather since Christmas. There's hardly been any precipitation at all down in the south. Almost 3 weeks of totally dry weather, which in the middle of winter is very, very unusual. But gradually the rainfall spikes are coming back, and particularly as we get into next week, we see quite an increase in the precipitation spikes. Bear in mind, this is for northwest of England. It's around the Wirral, so it's close to kind of like the Irish Sea, which means that it will be one of the wetter places in the country. But nevertheless, still an increase in precipitation for many of us through the second half of January. And with the temperatures being cold, then there is the potential, with that increase in precipitation, for snow at times. But it does depend greatly on the other parameters within the atmosphere, such as the dew point and the thickness lines and so on. Temperature anomalies going from the 15th to 23rd of January are now going to be a little bit colder than average. These are gradually cooling down day by day. So from the 15th to 23rd of January, temperature anomaly is just a little bit below average now for the UK and Ireland, as is through most parts of Western Europe. Precipitation anomalies still just about drier than average, but these are trending a little bit more unsettled day by day as well. But from the 15th to the 23rd of January, still more or less on the drier than average side. This is how the GFS is looking for Friday, as low pressure coming in off the Atlantic. It's coming into that quite cold air, and that could be bringing either rain or snow. But I suspect for the south and southwest will be primarily rain, but up in the north and in the east, that could be bringing snow as well. That low pressure dips away to our south as we go through into Saturday, and there could be some snow on the northern edge with that also. Then by Sunday, we're building a ridge across the country. That's been quite cold air, so it'll turn mainly dry over the weekend, but there could be some pretty hard overnight frost coming through as well. Early next week, the GFS turns things more unsettled with this low pressure diving in from the North Atlantic. That's bringing heavy rain, possibly some snow with it. It's running into quite cold air, has quite cold air behind it, so there could be some snow, especially through northern parts of the country. That low pressure slips away to our south by Wednesday, 23rd of January, turns the wind into the north or the northeast. That looks pretty cold, and it will be bringing snow showers into northern and eastern parts of the country. High pressure then returns as we run up towards day 10. That's how we are at day 10 on Friday, 25th of January. We're under an area of high pressure, so it's mainly dry, but there will be some really quite hard overnight frost with that as well. Notice no northern blocking signal on this GFS operational run. We keep these purple colours churning away over Greenland and going up to the Arctic. No northern blocking whatsoever. That's why instead of this high pressure being centred over Greenland, it's actually centred over the UK and Ireland. That means that it's cold and frosty, but it's not true Arctic or Siberian freeze type conditions. Going into extended range, we begin to move this area of high pressure out to the west of the UK. We had a go there at getting up towards Scandinavia, towards Greenland I should say, on the 27th of January, but it doesn't really come to anything. We just keep an area of high pressure very close to the UK. So just dry and anticyclonic with this particular GFS run. GFS is swinging wildly at the moment from run to run, coming up with so many different solutions, and this is all indicative of the uncertainty due to the sudden stratospheric warming, the increasing northern blocking signal, but also the fact that the Atlantic is not particularly well set up for a cold sort of negative NAO type pattern. So that's the reason I think that the GFS is swinging around wildly from run to run, trying to work out how it's all going to come together. This is a parallel GFS run, again on Friday, bringing its low pressure in from off the Atlantic. That's coming into cold air, so it could bring rain or snow to parts of the country. And that low pressure slips away to our south over the weekend. We build a ridge through the country, so it turns mostly dry, cold and frosty. Into the early part of next week, this low pressure tries to come in from off the Atlantic, but it is struggling. It's coming into pretty cold air, and it has pretty cold air behind it, so there's cold air sort of coming in from off the continent. There's also cold air sitting just there, and there's cold air from there, from the north as well. So cold air sort of enveloping this area of low pressure, and there might be some sort of snow type situation through the early part of next week with that area of low pressure. It moves away to our south, slips to our south, then again we build a ridge across the country by the middle of next week, mostly dry, cold and frosty, and then we go up towards day 10. Again, high pressure is taking over, but this time the high pressure is more centred to our east, so it's more towards southern Scandinavia with this area of high pressure, bringing in a gentle easterly wind, mostly dry, cold and frosty, but possibly with a few snow flurries around eastern coastal areas. In the more extended range, the parallel GFS run keeps that high pressure dominating until very late on, when it gradually collapses in a way to the south and returns us to a westerly. Again, you'll notice there's no real northern blocking signal here with the parallel GFS 6 o'clock run either. The GFS is very, very stubborn at the moment in not producing any notable northern blocking, at least on our side of the pole anyway. Now, the ECM was a very interesting run that appeared this morning, so I'll talk you through that next. We've got this ridge of high pressure over the country on Friday. It's going to be mainly cold to start on Friday, but this low pressure is coming into that cold air, bringing a risk of rain or snow. But the low pressure really struggles. So as early as around Friday, Saturday, we have got differences between the GFS output and the ECM output, because this low pressure is a lot further west as we get through to midnight on Saturday compared to where the GFS has it. So this would restrict any precipitation primarily to the far west and southwest of the country. That precipitation could be falling as snow, particularly over high ground. That's Sunday, so less of a ridge on Sunday. Differences there. We've got another low pressure system coming into the north of Scotland. That could bring some snow into Scotland, I would have thought. Otherwise, England and Wales, probably mostly dry, frosty and cold. Then to the early part of next week, we've got this low pressure coming in from off the Atlantic. So that's kind of like in line with the parallel GFS run, with this low pressure struggling to come in to the west and possibly bringing rain and snow into western parts of the country. But then that low pressure dives southwards as we get through to Wednesday, the 23rd of January. We're pulling in a really quite a cold and strong easterly wind with ridging to the north. So there's a ridge over Scandinavia, there's a ridge back towards Iceland and Greenland and into the middle of the Atlantic as well. And then we get this real easterly blast across the country as we go through Thursday next week. This is Thursday, the 24th of January. That would drive in snow showers across many parts of the country. I don't think the upper air temperatures are very cold, so it's not a beast from the east, sort of easterly, but it's certainly pretty bitter easterly, and it would be enough to drive in a lot of snow showers with high pressure to the north of the UK. So totally different to what the GFS parallel operation runs are showing. That's how things look at day 10, which is Friday 25th January. That high pressure is kind of like centred, it's almost becoming a true northern blocking feature. It's centred kind of like around Iceland or just a little bit to the south of Iceland, but it is ridging up towards Greenland. You'll notice the NAO here is negative now. So we've got the high pressure around Iceland, we've got low pressure replacing the Azores high around the Azores. The jet stream, therefore, is going down here. It's a long way south, kind of like going down to southern Spain and North Africa. And that looks pretty locked in, I have to say, that blocking feature. There's no quick way out of that. So prolonged cold spell by day 10 on this morning's ECMWF. That will be in line, of course, with the ECM 30-day ensemble. The long-range model is also going for prolonged cold weather. So they are in line with one another, but with no real support from the GFS operational or parallel runs. I thought I'd show you the snow potential with that ECM run. So we're starting on this is weather.us, by the way. You can find a link to weather.us on the links page at Gaz and also in the description at YouTube. Starting on Thursday, no particular precipitation, or snow, I should say, on Wednesday, rather. This is Thursday, so snow beginning to appear across parts of Scotland and some parts of Western Britain. Bear in mind, this overdoes the snow because it assumes every flake of snow that falls lays, and that isn't really the case, but it's an indication of where you can probably expect snow at times. That's Friday. You'll see by Friday we have got a little bit of snow cover being forecast there for eastern parts of the country. So as early as the second half of this week, there might be a little bit of snow around. Not a great deal, but certainly more than we've had through most of this week, because it has been a notably snowless winter, really, the first half of it. Very little snow at all. That's Sunday, again, just little bits of snow cover around the country on Saturday. Not of any great note, but certainly a little bit there. That's Sunday, and again, you'll notice the snow cover is just increased that little bit across parts of Wales, across parts of Northern England, certainly across Scotland. Gradually, day by day, the snow cover is beginning to clock up a little bit. This is Monday, and again, just a little bit more in way of snow cover. It is overdoing it, of course, because it's not as straightforward as every single flake of snow that falls lays. But just an idea that day by day we're gradually getting a little bit more in way of snow cover appearing across the country. And then you go through to Tuesday, and that's when that low pressure is beginning to dive southwards from Tuesday through to Wednesday. We pull in that easterly wind. So by the time you get through to Wednesday, actually we've got really quite deep snow cover across parts of Wales, southwest England, also Northern Ireland, also Scotland. Snow cover is increasing all the time across eastern Britain as well. Let's go through to Thursday, and you'll see pretty deep snow then across parts of Northern England, Scotland, Northern Ireland, Wales, southwestern parts of England. Possibly not as much as you would have thought for more eastern parts of the country, given that easterly wind. But again, bear in mind, it's not going to be picking up snow showers all that well, and I would suspect that actually the snow depths will be lower than this for western parts of the country. It will probably be higher than this for eastern parts of the country. But it is kind of like an indication that the further on we're going over the next few days, the greater the snow risk potential is getting, especially as we get through to next week. I think we'll be doing Snow Watch before too much longer. I keep saying that, and I would suspect you'll probably see Snow Watch either tomorrow or Thursday. We'll just have a little bit more of an in-depth look at the snow potential over the rest of this week and also the weekend and into next week. These are how the ECM ensembles are looking for De Built in Holland, starting mild up to between 5 and 10 Celsius, but downhill all the way. So by the weekend and into next week, basically we're hovering very close to freezing at De Built. We stay there, possibly a little bit of a tick up by the very end of January. That's the 30th of January. Just there. Some of these ensemble members also are producing very frosty nights. So some of them are kind of like going down to underneath -5. Definite cooling trend for De Built. These are how the postage stamps are looking with the ECM ensembles. This is how things are at day 10, which is going to be the 25th of January. So at day 10, these are all of the options that are on the table within the ECM ensembles. We've got 12 ensemble members that have a ridge of high pressure over and to the west of the UK. So they're mainly settled, probably not overly cold. The jet stream is still going to be in that kind of position. So they're probably mainly dry, but probably quite cold. They might bring in a little bit of an easterly flow to southern parts of the country, but overall they wouldn't be all that cold. Then we've got another 11, including the operational run, the run we're just looking at, that has the high pressure centred around Iceland. Low pressure is underneath it across northern France. And these are pulling down cold winds from the east and from the northeast, those 11. Got another 10, including the control, ECM control run, but again has a high pressure out to the northwest of the UK, so kind of like somewhere between Iceland and Greenland. Low pressure is underneath it across central and western parts of Europe. These ones also look pretty cold. They're bringing the winds in from a northerly or northeasterly direction. Another 8 have the high pressure, kind of like between Scandinavia and Iceland. So they're also pretty cold ensemble members with the low pressure to the south across France. They're bringing in a little bit more of an easterly type flow. There's 6 ensemble members that have high pressure centred over Greenland, so they're genuine northern blocking, true northern blocking, with low pressure covering much of north and west Europe. They look cold and potentially very snowy, I would have thought, with those ones. And then finally there's 4 that don't really have any sort of high pressure to the north or northwest. They just have this big trough covering the UK and most of northern Europe. They're probably relatively mild, or certainly not particularly cold, and they'd be unsettled as well. So a lot of options on the table, but as you sort of bring them all together, it just depends how far north that high pressure is going to go. But most of those ECM ensemble members want to produce some sort of high pressure to the north of the UK, somewhere either around Iceland or between Iceland and Scandinavia, or possibly to the north of Scandinavia or around Greenland, somewhere in that area. Most of those ECM ensemble members seem to be going for quite significant northern blocking. And then at 2 weeks away, which takes us to the 30th of January, we see that the ECM ensembles are breaking down like this. We've got 18 that have weak ridging from Greenland through the mid-Atlantic. They've got low pressure to the south, so they look pretty cold. They'd probably bring winds in from the north. Then we have another 14 that are true northern blocking with high pressure over Greenland, low pressure to the south of the UK. They'd be bringing in very cold northerly to northeasterly winds. Another 11 with a mid-Atlantic ridge, and they extend back up towards Greenland as well. Low pressure over the UK and Western Europe. They'd be cold, bringing wind from a north or northeasterly direction. And then 8 have the high pressure, kind of like to the south of Greenland through the mid-Atlantic, not getting that ridge back as much towards Greenland, but still probably enough to be quite cold, quite northerly. Winds will be coming in from the north with those ones. So by 2 weeks away, nearly all of the ensemble members actually are looking really quite cold within the ECM suite at the moment. Finally, CFS V2, these are the 500 millibar heights broken down to week periods. The first week period takes us from the 15th to the 21st of January with below average heights, a trough covering northern and western Europe, above average heights in the middle of the Atlantic. That looks like it could be turning increasingly cold and wintry. Then we go through to week 2, which is the 22nd to the 8th of January, with the trough centred over the UK and much of central western Europe. There's a bit of a blocking signal up towards Greenland. The main block that extends back towards the Pacific side of the Arctic, and a ridge in the middle of the Atlantic as well. They look cold and wintry generally. I think we'll be bringing in a wind at least from a northerly direction, if not a northeasterly or an easterly. Week 3 is that's week 4, so let's just go to week 3. And this is the 29th of January to 4th of February. The trough that is centred just a little bit to west of the UK. Very strong northern blocking signal around Greenland and back to the North Pole. Because this trough of low pressure is centred just to the southwest of us, could actually be bringing in a slightly milder southerly or southwesterly flow. But I'm not sure about that, given how much blocking we have around Greenland and the Arctic. I would expect that trough to be rather east of that position, somewhere across central parts of Europe. And then we go through to week 4, which is the 5th to the 11th of February, still with extensive northern blocking across Greenland and to the north of Scandinavia. Trough is centred over top of the UK. Again, could be bringing in some slightly less cold air from off the Atlantic around that trough. But again, not sure about the position of that with this ridging up here. I suspect that trough would be pushed more towards central parts of Europe, and we'd probably be pulling down cold air from the north or even the northeast. Essentially, the CFS is still going for very extensive northern blocking. And overall, the trends still seem to be through the second half of January, especially through the last week or 10 days of the month and into the early part of February. The trends all seem to be there to keep things or turn things increasingly cold and wintry. So I think that's got what we've got to be looking out for. The only problem is that the GFS is having none of it, certainly from a northern blocking perspective. The differences between the GFS and the ECM at day 10 were really very stark and very dramatic. I'm not sure what's causing this, other than the fact, as I said at the beginning of the video, we have got a lot of uncertainty about the Atlantic, which isn't particularly well set up for cold weather, versus the northern blocking and the sudden stratospheric warming that's causing this increase in the northern blocking signal. So there's a fight going on in the atmosphere between the Atlantic and between the Arctic as to which of those is going to take control as we go through to late January and the start of February. An absolutely fascinating period of weather, and I suspect there'll be several more twists and turns with this before we get to the end of January. So buckle up. It's going to be a really interesting roller coaster ride. I think there'll be several more ups and downs, but we may finish up with really quite a cold and wintry spell of weather, and quite protracted and prolonged as well. Certainly can't rule it out. Right, that's it for today's videos. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll be back tomorrow, of course, with 5-day forecast and another look at the next week to 10 days as well. That's all for now. Thanks for watching.